Thank you, Eve, for those beautiful words in front of my loving family. That really was quite an honor. And first off, welcome to my family. Can I get a round of applause for them? Yes, my brother does have a mullet. It is a thing in our family. Anyway, where do we begin? It was mid-October 2007. As the sun began to set on a crispy summer evening, young Ryan had one thing and one thing only on his mind, as nerves and excitement ran through his body throughout the duration of the day. As my father and his friends enjoyed ice-cold beers around the braai, I geniusly devised a tactic whereby I poured the remains of my apple juice box into a glass to fool them into thinking I was one of them, thereby earning their respect, becoming a valued and honored member of the conversation. Moments later, the television set became my top priority for the next 2 hours, as the familiar, angel-like voice of Hugh Bladen filled the room with excitement and pure and utter anticipation. After bellowing out the South African national anthem at the top of my lungs and hearing a sweet rendition of God Save the Queen, I quickly settled into what would be the greatest moment of my young life at the time. Now, of course, the event I'm referring to is, of course, the 2007 Rugby World Cup between the Springboks and England. And for those of you that aren't familiar with how the game went, the Springboks went on to win 15 points to 6 to lift the Webb Ellis Cup for the second time in our professional history. I'll never forget the footage of watching John Smith, Thabo Mbeki, and the Springbok squad as a whole lift the trophy, showcasing to the world that we, South Africans, were the best. It was in this moment I promised to myself, my friends, my family, and all those around me that one day I'll go on to represent the Springboks in the sport I love most, on the biggest stage possible, and achieve my dreams. Now, if we fast forward 14 years later, I got a mullet, moustache, and earring, and quite honestly, this is as close as I got to playing for the Springboks. And after looking at it, my legs haven't grown much either. But that's besides the point, and not the focus of this conversation, he says with a tear in his eye. But how did I feel in that moment? Well, I was proud. I had this burning feeling of accomplishment. I was beginning to see the meaning of teamwork and camaraderie in practice. It gave me the ability to dream. I was connected with every single individual in that room and every South African as a whole. And most importantly, it taught me to always celebrate your wins and always be ready for the losses, because you'll never know when they'll come in life. Now, these raw emotions that I was experiencing as a 7-year-old were not isolated. No. Sport has been providing people with value since almost the beginning of time. From a spectator's perspective, the impact the team has on them is far more than the final result on the field of play. The bond between a fan and their beloved sports team is a true bond that purely holds the heart. Now, I thought it would be important to mention up front that it's not only sport that can achieve these emotions and life lessons to an extent. However, it is my passion and therefore the focus of my talk today. Now, studies have shown that there are an abundance of psychological and general benefits that watching sport has on individuals. And these include, just to name a few, provides them with that feeling of accomplishment. It helps spark motivation. It reduces stress. It provides them with a sense of community. And it has this raw ability to connect generations. Now, to unpack this unique relationship even further, I thought it would be best to kind of lay some theoretical and scientific foundation, be it pretty brief, just to kind of unpack this unique relationship even further. Now, the tools I'm about to use describe the level of one's emotional attachment to their team, their unique behaviors of how they deal with their team's performances, and finally, the biological and neurological reaction it has on them. Firstly, the Sports Spectator Identification Scale is a widely used instrument designed to measure a spectator's level of identification with the sports team and in turn the degree of psychological connection they have. Now, the scale classifies fans anywhere between the 3 following groups: lowly identified, moderately identified, and highly identified. In other words, the rational, the fair-weathered, and in my instance, my father's instance, Eve's instance, and weirdly enough Taylor's instance when it comes to the Springboks, the lunatics. Keep it down, peanut gallery. Anyway, there is compelling evidence that highlights a fan's connection with their respective sports team is a real relationship in their brain mechanics. The sports team becomes a real part of who you are. Their success is perceived as your own success, and their failures feel as if they are your own. Now, this is supported by the high degree of self-inclusion that exists among various sports fans alike, of whom regularly find themselves speaking in we mode when their favorite team wins, and they when it loses. This is perfectly described by the Bergen-Korf theory, which refers to the high-profile indicators of fans' behavior, and subsequently how each group deals with its success or defeat. Now, on the one side of the spectrum, we have how the various fan bases react when their favorite team wins. These people are known as Bergers, and what Berg stands for is those that bask in reflected glory. Now, these individuals look to enjoy the fruits of success and recognition despite having done nothing tangible to achieve the success. This is where the we technique is used, as well as an increase in levels of bragging and arrogance. I know I can relate to that as a Springbok fan. Secondly, we have those that Korf. This is how the various fan bases react when their various teams lose. Now, what Korf stands for is those that cut off reflected failure. They attempt to avoid any negative evaluation associated with an unsuccessful team. They choose to distance themselves by using the they technique, or alternatively, just quickly switching their attention to the next sport team on their supportive agenda. Now, a study conducted by Paul Bernard, a behavioral scientist at Georgia State University, provided conclusive evidence that the testosterone and dopamine levels of jubilant fans on the winning team were 20% higher upon the conclusion of the relevant game. A direct correlation was further identified that showed those fans on the losing team experienced a 20% decline in testosterone. This shows that there's quite literally a biological impact. Interestingly enough, the same study was conducted on the athletes involved in the respective game, which showed an identical neurological reaction. Anyway, what does sports fandom teach us, and why is it so integral to society? So firstly, the basic human need that sport does provide is its ability to provide spectators with a sense of belonging. Now, a great example of this is the heritage that has been ingrained with regards to first-team rugby in South African schools. The second a student joins a respective school, they are part of traditions and a culture that precedes even their own existence, and instantly become part of a network that's rooted to the team's success. Secondly, sport allows people to overcome their differences and encourage dialogue, and thereby break down stereotypes, cultural differences, ignorance, and discrimination, and in turn unite people from different walks of life based on a mutual love for their team. Now, a more recent example of this would be the 2019 Rugby World Cup Springbok side. Despite the ongoing turbulence that was being experienced in South Africa at the time, this incredible team managed, even if it was just temporary, to unite a nation and allow South Africans from all different walks of life to put their personal differences aside and celebrate as one, with thousands flocking in from far and wide just to catch a glimpse of their idols. And thirdly, sport teaches you to aspire to be the hero, whether it be on the field of play, in your community, with your family, or in any aspect of life. Now, an interesting example here is as a result of a man by the name of Michael Jordan. He inspired millions around the world and in his own way had an incredible impact on society as a whole. However, one boy who inspired goes by the name of LeBron James, who despite going on to be one of the greatest basketball players of all time, went even further in contributing to social development in various communities. He even went on to open the I Promise School, aimed at providing at-risk children with an opportunity to make a life of their own. Now, sports teams around the world, whether it be on a micro or macro level, have always been pillars of their respective communities. Both their direct and indirect impact on communities includes providing economic growth, social development, national unity, and even a simple distraction for fans alike. The heritage of sports fandom is ingrained in these communities throughout generations. Now, one of the more obvious examples in the world we know is that of football clubs being the foundation of many UK communities alike. The roots of these clubs' influence on the communities stems back to its inception in the early 1800s, with many clubs and therefore their respective fan bases being built on the foundation of industrial workers and the brief distraction that these teams provided. The love that the respective fans have for these local teams has been passed through the generation and is truly and purely ingrained in communities as a social and economic pillar. Another one is high school football is an important institution in rural American culture. Friday night football is a big event for smaller towns, with the majority of its inhabitants flocking to support these local school teams. These teams act as an engine of growth and development for smaller towns. Now, a very interesting example I came across during my research is something that happened in Rabun County, which has no more than 16,000 in its population, in a town called Tiger with no more than 400. So the local high school football team, the Wildcats, which is probably the most American high school football team name I've ever heard, just on a side note, had the privilege of hosting the 2017 state championship final in their home state. Now, this saw a massive influx of travelers to the state with an expected 120% increase in the population size for that championship weekend. In turn, this provided massive economic growth for the place as travelers spend money on hotels, restaurants, local businesses, etc. In turn, it also put Rabun County on the map as the athletics program gained further recognition and external funding. This led to improvement in facilities, employment opportunities, and gave students a real chance to one day become internationally recognized athletes. This has been proven with their current quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, gaining national recognition as he's recognized as the #2 prospect for the class of 2022. All this came about because of one high school team's achievements. Now, with everything I've said over the last few minutes or so, I thought it would be constructive to highlight two additional macro moments that some of you might not be aware of that truly had a positive impact on these communities. The first being, on October the 8th, 2005, Ivory Coast battled to qualify for their first ever FIFA World Cup. And despite this monumental feat, team talisman Didier Drogba and the squad as a whole quickly reverted their attention to the ongoing civil war that had raged through their country since 2002. In a passionate speech, he pleaded to his countrymen to lay down their weapons and celebrate as one. He went on to say that this team showed that those from the north, south, center, and west can coexist and play towards a shared aim. His actions instigated dramatic and immediate change. As the video went viral, it led to the two warring sides meeting at the negotiating table, where a ceasefire was agreed. This is not where it ended, no. In 2007, Drogba announced that the national team would be playing in the rebel stronghold in the north. And keep in mind, he was from the south, so this was a ploy to kind of unite the country. And that's exactly what it did. The team went on to win 5-0, and as the country celebrated as one, it brought both hope and peace to the country during their darkest hour. Oh, okay, I love this one. I must keep in mind, and I must warn you all, there's a swear word coming. It's part of the script. Just bear with me. Anyway, to provide a bit of context, the Boston Red Sox, which is the local Boston baseball team, finished last in 2012 and extended their run of not winning a World Series at home since 1918. The fans were beginning to grow impatient. The next season started strong, but on Patriots Day 2013, the team and the city was rocked by the traumatic bombings at the Boston Marathon, where 3 were killed and a couple hundred injured. The city was shook, scared, and was beginning to lose hope. The first game back at their home stadium since the traumatic events, a player by the name of David Ortiz, the team leader at the time, made it clear that the team felt the city's pain and furthermore preached a rallying call where he said, "This is our fucking city and nobody is going to dictate our freedom." Yes, I've got goosebumps, sorry. The team adopted a new identity and embodied the new Boston Strong tag from the get-go and in all aspects. They managed to defy all odds and go on to win the 2013 World Series at home for the first time in 95 years. 95 years. They proved that when they had a grieving city on the back, they proved that providing a grieving city with hope, they gave them a reason to smile and showed the world what a unified collective can achieve. Over 5 million Bostonites took to the streets that day to celebrate, which is the 5th most in any victory parade of all time. And it showed that at a time when sport meant nothing, it still meant everything at the same time. Now, to say sport has all the answers to life's questions would be wrong. However, if you were to take one thing from my talk today, it would be that the impact a team has on its loyal fan base goes far beyond the final result. It gives us that intangible shoulder to cry on in a time of sorrow, and that imaginary bottle opener to utilize in a time of celebration. It is the one constant in many people's lives that they simply cannot bring themselves to question. And that is why I believe it will always be a pillar for communities to lean on in a time of need. Thank you.